So what's going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video where today we are back with a Zombies Q&A, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. But let's get into it. Here we go and enjoy. So the first question of the day is from Ethan S, and you say, "Hey BOA, I have a question. Why is it in every game you start with a pistol, and even in cutscenes when the characters with different guns?" Okay, so what you're pretty much saying is, why in every map do our characters start out with pistols? Because in the cutscenes before, the characters could be using different weapons, shotguns, ARs, SMGs, yet when it comes to starting the actual game, they don't have those weapons anymore. And even before that, let's say for example in BO3, our characters are in Der Eisendrache, they've got all of their weapons, maybe they have the ray gun, the bows, an assault rifle, but then when they travel to their next destination, which would have been Zetsubonoshima, they start out with a pistol again. Why don't they carry on the weapons from one map to another? How do they somehow lose the weapons that they have whilst travelling to the next location? Well, that's a good question. I don't believe this has ever been brought up in Zombies. We haven't heard in quotes from our characters them ever mention this, them ever talk about what happened to their previous guns. We do know, like I said, to get from location to location they teleport around. There are some exceptions to this with the transit crew back in Black Ops 2, when they went from transit to Die Rise and then from Die Rise to Buried. They didn't use a teleporter. Well, they did to get from transit to Die Rise. They were teleported there by Richtofen, but in order to get from Die Rise to Buried, they walked. And we even saw in the Buried cutscene, which shows us what happened between Die Rise and Buried, the characters had weapons in that time of travelling, yet when they actually get to Buried itself, we start off with pistols again. So what happened? Did they just lose them? Did they get taken away? If so, by who? Dr. Monty, Richtofen, and you would then have to ask why. That wouldn't make sense. If we did know that all of our characters teleported from location to location, we could say maybe it's something to do with teleportation. It causes them to lose their weapons, or they drop it whilst being teleported. I don't really know, but that isn't the case. So this is a difficult one to talk about because we don't have an official answer, and there isn't one straight method of transportation from map to map. Sometimes they walk, sometimes they teleport through the rift or through the MTDs, so I'm unsure. Of course, in terms of gameplay, it would just be far too easy. Treyarch wouldn't want to give us the weapons from our previous maps, one, because that would be difficult to do. Everyone would have different starting weapons. It'd make round one way too easy. So in terms of gameplay, it doesn't make sense, and for storyline, we just don't have an answer. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. The next question from Carl says, "Why is the moon teleporter so big?" Now, perhaps you wouldn't have noticed this before, but it's a valid question. The teleporter that you can find at Groom Lake, which I believe you are referring to, even though there is one on Moon as well, but I've noticed that the one at Groom Lake is a lot bigger than our usual teleporter pad. First off, as you can see here, the pad itself looks pretty regular, but if you look around it on the ground, you can just see how far down the teleporter itself actually goes. If you look at any others in any other map, they are nowhere near as big as this. It's pretty much just the teleporter pad. Sometimes there is encasing around it for the MTD. That stands for the matter transference device, if you're wondering. That's what this type of teleporter was. But yeah, our teleporter in Griffin Station is very big. Also above it, we have this, I don't even know what to describe this like. I mean, it's clearly part of the teleporter. What this does, I don't know. But I believe the reason our teleporter at Griffin Station is so much larger than any other is because of the distance that it was required for people to travel. Remember that this teleporter in Area 51 was linked to the moon. Every other teleporter that we see in Zombies teleports people from place to place on Earth. In a lot of instances, they teleport you short locations. For example, in Derice, we find 3 teleporters and the mainframe, so there's 4 in total, but they only teleport you a few meters. Whereas the one in Griffin Station literally teleports you thousands of kilometers all the way to the moon. So that's probably the reason why it's so much bigger than any other. And in fact, there's a radio which you can find in Classified, which is a discussion between Sawyer and Schuster. Schuster, we know, was a former Group 935 scientist who went to work for the Pentagon or the Americans, and he kind of touches upon the Groom Lake teleporter.
"I'm just a little confused, Dr. Schuster. You've already successfully established a teleporter link between the Pentagon and Groom Lake.
The Pentagon to Groom Lake is child's play, a distance of 3,890 kilometers. What we're talking about now is a distance of 380,000 kilometers.
But it can be done.
Of course, Colonel Sawyer, but I had 2 years to perfect the link to Groom Lake. The timetable you've given me to establish a link to the moon is far more aggressive.
Do I need to remind you what we're up against? Dr. Richtofen told us about Griffin Station back in '45. From what we've discovered, he told the Soviets the same thing. The Soviets achieved teleportation 2 years before we did. If they get to the moon first, they get to claim Griffin Station.
Yes, I know all about your adorable space race. But need I remind you that if this teleporter becomes operational, even a single mathematical error could lead to catastrophic results. Yes, it will take you to the moon. I have little worry over where it will take you. I worry about when.
What? Time travel? Give me a break.
Precisely. If the specifications are not exact, we could create temporal rifts with ripple effects that will undo the very fabric of space-time itself. Simply put, don't rush. Science moves at its own pace.
Just get it done, Doctor. You have 2 weeks before we begin testing.
So as you could just hear, Sawyer says to Schuster, "I'm a little confused, Dr. Schuster. You've already successfully established a teleporter link between the Pentagon and Groom Lake." Pretty much saying, what's the problem? Why can't you get the Area 51 teleporter working? Why can't you link it to moon? And then Schuster replies, "The Pentagon to Groom Lake teleporter is child play. It's a distance of 3,890 kilometers. What we're talking about now is a distance of 380,000 kilometers. So the teleporter at Groom Lake or Area 51 was a lot more harder to set up just because of the distance it was required to travel, which also explains why it's a lot bigger. It takes you a lot further. The next question from Adrian says, "Why do the zombies kill themselves when you hold them for too long?" So this has always been a thing in zombies, at least as far as I can remember. I haven't held a zombie in World at War or BO1 for a very long time, but I'm pretty sure this feature still existed back then. If not, you guys can correct me in the comment section below. But I have played a lot of BO2 recently, and of course BO3 and 4. In Black Ops 4 this is especially annoying, but what I'm talking about is when you leave a zombie at the end of a round. Let's say you're hunting for an Easter egg, you're trying to build the shield or spin the mystery box until you get a certain weapon. You don't want to do this halfway through a round when there's tens of zombies chasing you. It can be difficult and frustrating, and so what a lot of people do is leave one zombie at the end of the round and then do whatever they need to do. This way you're not distracted and you only have to dodge one zombie whilst you're concentrating on other things. But as you say in your question, why does this last zombie that you're holding die? It kills itself. You can usually hold them for a few minutes and then it dies and you start a new round. On Black Ops 2, I think you could hold them for a lot longer. A lot of people would create a crawler, that way the zombie is slower. However, if you create a crawler, it would tend to die off quickly. It seems the further you stray away from the zombie, the more likely it was to die. This could be for two reasons. We know the zombies despawn if you get too far away from them, so on transit this was a big problem. Even if you leave 10 zombies, if you stray too far away, they will despawn and then spawn in somewhere else. So if you leave a crawler and it despawns, then it's going to start a new round. If you also think about it, a crawler should bleed out faster since you've already shot it. Can zombies bleed out? That's never a question I've thought to ask. So you could give that excuse to crawlers dying. They bleed out since you've blown their legs off, but the last zombie also dies even if it's a normal one. On Black Ops 4 this was so annoying just because the last zombie was always super fast. Even on the early rounds, it was very difficult to leave just one zombie, and even if you do so, they died off a lot quicker. But why does the last zombie die? Could there be a story reason to this? Do the zombies kill themselves for a reason? We know in the earlier days they were being controlled, so you could say maybe Samantha killed the last zombie to spawn in more. In Black Ops 3 and 4, we don't know who's controlling the zombies, if anyone, so possibly that's just a decision they take themselves. The zombies kill themselves for some reason. I'm not sure, or maybe there's no storyline explanation to this. It's something you've got to ignore, and it's just for gameplay. If you could leave a last zombie for as long as you wanted, it'd make the game a hell of a lot easier. Especially when hunting Easter eggs. I reckon a lot of people would be able to do things in half the time. So yeah, I can't see a storyline explanation to this. It's just to make the game more difficult, and so that you're not holding a zombie for an hour whilst you get everything you want to get done. That would make the game pretty easy. Although I will say, on BO4, it's very annoying. So there we go, that is it guys, that is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do, drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Thank you all so much for 600,000 subscribers, and I will see you in the next video. Leave any questions you have in the comment section below, and until then, goodbye.